What's going on today, guys? So last month I reviewed Spider-Man in preparation, of course, for Captain America Civil War because Spider-Man is going to be in it. I had a lot of fun with that review, and today, guys, we're going to be continuing that by talking about Spider-Man 2. Now, I know this is the trilogy, but I have my DVD of it right there. And just as a heads up, guys, there will be spoilers everywhere throughout this review, so please, of course, watch Spider-Man 2 because this movie's amazing, and come back to this review. And at the same time, guys, welcome back to My Favorite Film segment, the section of my channel where I review those films that impact me the most, and Spider-Man 2 is absolutely one of them. My previous superhero movie I reviewed for my favorite movies is, of course, The Dark Knight. That is my favorite DC Comics movie. Spider-Man 2 is my favorite Marvel comic book movie. Hopefully you guys should know from my original Spider-Man review that I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man was my favorite comic book hero growing up, but guys, Spider-Man 2 will always have a special place in my heart because this is the movie that I remember seeing when I was at the tender age of 6 years old. This movie had every single thing that I could have possibly wanted in a superhero movie. A decade after seeing it, because I cannot believe it has been that long, I still think so. There are a few movies that I ever am going to call perfect because that is a word that is very hard and controversial to use because in so many movies, you're going to find flaws. You're going to find plot holes. You're going to find miscellaneous stuff, anachronisms, continuity errors. However, Spider-Man 2 is one of the few movies that I've seen that I can honestly say, to me, is a perfect movie. So, of course, we get another great opening montage for Spider-Man. I love all of the opening title sequences. They are so well done. I really love the ingenuity and computer-generated effects that goes into making these. And one thing that I really love about Spider-Man 2 is split personalities. This is a massive thing that's going to be covered throughout this review. And what I really love about the intro in particular is that there is a split shot of one side Peter and the other side Spider-Man. So Peter Parker is now a college boy and he is filled with so much to do. He's a pizza delivery boy. He still has to take photos of Spider-Man for the Daily Bugle. And of course, he has to be Spider-Man. He has to try to deal with his relationship, ongoing and offgoing, with Mary Jane. There's so much that happens with Peter Parker in this movie, and that I think is terrific. And our film begins with him delivering pizza, and he has to deliver it on time, and this sequence is great. I still love it. It really just gets you into Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 1, to me, took a little while, I think, to get really into the movie. When he finally has that dream sequence to become Spider-Man, that to me is where I think it really comes into play. What I really love about Spider-Man 2 in particular is the way you can view this movie. Because a lot of comic book movies, they're like comic book movies. I think you can view this movie in so many different ways. And I said in a little sneak hint at the end of Spider-Man 1, I said that the movie was a very fun and entertaining movie, because it quite simply is. I really love the first Spider-Man movie, and I find that is a fun, entertaining action-adventure comic book movie. Spider-Man 2, in my eyes, is actually a psychological drama. Now, I know that a lot of people may think this is kind of far-fetched. To me, this is a movie that's able to balance genres perfectly, with just a great hint of drama, comedy, action, so much great stuff in this movie. And of course, I need to talk about the characters and their situations, because this really sets up the type of movie you're about to see with Spider-Man 2. So of course I talked about Peter Parker, but now we have an interesting relationship going on with Mary Jane. It's kind of off and on. They don't really have a lot of connections anymore besides them living next to each other. And she now has this new play that she's starring in, and she really hopes Peter can come. However, he's just an empty seat. In fact, Peter's relationship with everyone is virtually not good at all. He has so many problems going on with work. He lost his pizza delivery job, and he nearly lost his job at the Daily Bugle all in the same day. And on the same day as well, he's nearly flunking out of college. His conversation with Dr. Connors reveals a lot.
Your grades have been steadily declining. You're late for class. You always appear exhausted.
When he arrives home, it's his birthday, and he doesn't even know it. And then, of course, we get introduced to the conflict between Peter and Harry. This is so important and so essential to this movie that they completely screwed it up in Spider-Man 3, but I will wait until I talk about Spider-Man 3 to tell you guys what that means. It's really heartbreaking because these two were best friends in the first movie. And Harry's last line to Peter, "I swear on my father's grave, Spider-Man will pay." Now in this movie, he is desperately searching for his father's killer, which is, of course, not Spider-Man, but his father himself. I mean, God, even his relationship with Aunt May becomes bad. He basically tells her that he was partially responsible for her husband's death. This movie hits Peter Parker over the head like 1,000 times. This character is beaten so far into the ground that when he rises up, it is a triumphant moment, but we will get to that very soon. So now Peter is going to attend MJ's play and take a close look at this song that's being played.
You tried so hard to be someone that you forgot who you are.
This song is incredibly important because it just further examines the split personality of Peter. The plot really gets going when we are introduced to the character of Dr. Otto Octavius. Very interesting name, played of course by the great Alfred Molina. And I think that he is fantastic in this movie. He's spectacular. I really like him as Doc Ock. Just like Willem Dafoe with the Green Goblin, I really personally can't see anyone else playing this character. I think he does a marvelous job in this movie, and he has a reason for doing what he does. He's conflicted, and at the same time, he has motivation. This movie flows very well by setting up its characters in the best way, and by literally grilling Peter Parker into the ground. It does such a great job of doing that you forget that this movie isn't really a big, explosive, action, fun movie like the first one is. However, it gets even worse for Peter when he finds out that Mary Jane is now dating someone. Man, does this movie put him into the ground. So of course, with quivering rage, he turns into Spider-Man, but now he's begun to lose his web-swinging abilities. And this is so great. It's a great plot device that doesn't feel like a gimmick, because he's starting to lose who he really is. And a great parallel to this scene is the final shot. Peter is literally walking away with his bike with a whole bunch of Mary Janes to the right. Now this basically symbolizes who he could be if he was not Spider-Man. He could just be with Mary Jane all the time. Next, we're introduced to Otto's experiment where he reveals his 4 actuators. Of course, his test goes awry because the material is now unstable and his wife dies in the process in a shot that I think is great. One thing I think is great about Sam Raimi's trilogy are that there are shots in it that to me, I'm thinking no one else other than Sam Raimi really thinks about them. We previously had found out that Harry and Oscorp Industries were funding Otto's experiment. So the fact that he not only saw Spider-Man there, but all of the tritium gone, makes him even more pissed at Spider-Man and more pissed at Peter because he's wondering, now my fortune that I spent so much on with Otto's experiment is gone, and Spider-Man was there and he really didn't do anything. Now I understand that this next point has been made before by a couple of reviewers, but I definitely need to bring it up because the hospital scene following this is one of the most suspense and terrifying sequences I ever saw as a kid. It was so terrifying seeing it the first time because it literally feels like a horror movie. And rewatching it, I'm like, yeah, this is very Evil Dead. And there's actually a shot with the guy looking at a chainsaw. I wish that was Bruce Campbell that would have been the guy that grabbed the chainsaw, because Sam Raimi would have made the best Evil Dead little cameo moment ever in a Spider-Man movie. The shots, the low angle cuts, and of course the panning shots following the arms just moving from one side to the other. I mean, it's terrifying. What I really like about the character of Otto Octavius is that he's not only conflicted, but he has a reason. He has an actual motive to do what he does. Quite simply because he thought he could have overestimated any miscalculation with his experiments because that was his life's work. And the fact that he lost his wife subsequently just makes it all the better. The first big action sequence between the two of them takes place at a bank, and I think it's very well staged and choreographed. I feel like it's great because you honestly can feel the pain of Spider-Man because he's now beginning to lose all of his powers. He starts to lose his web-swinging abilities and gets hurt by Otto because of that. So now we come to what is, in my opinion, the most pivotal moment in the first half of the movie. And that is this party scene because Peter Parker gets hit so hard into the ground that he just can't take it anymore. Not only is he treated terribly by Mary Jane in the first part, not only is he treated terribly by Harry as well, and not only did he lose his 2 best friends in that one night, but it features the son of J. Jonah Jameson, which is an astronaut, which you find out is the guy that Mary Jane has been dating all along, and we find out that she has agreed to marry him. I can't even begin to express the amount of pain and suffering and anguish that's going on in Peter's body right now. And that is his last straw. Because as he swings away, he not only begins to lose his powers, but he can't even see clearly now. So after Peter has a very important discussion with the doctor who says,
maybe you're not supposed to be Spider-Man climbing those walls. That's why you keep falling.
we have a scene with so much dramatic tension and heft. It is extraordinarily heartbreaking. Peter has a vision of him sitting in a car with Uncle Ben, and he's trying to tell him to be Spider-Man because you've been given the gift, and of course, with great power comes great responsibility. But Peter realizes that he just can't be Spider-Man anymore. because there's too much responsibility. There's way too many things that he has to balance within his own life that he just can't do it anymore. So he of course throws the uniform away. So after of course the great raindrops are falling on my head scene, we notice that Peter Parker is now perfectly adjusted to his regular life. He's able to do his homework, he's able to see friends a lot more, and of course he's able to show up to Mary Jane's new play, which is terrific because he is not an empty seat anymore. However, there are still problems going on in the city. It's like, imagine if your favorite superhero just decided to take a holiday because he wanted to. There would be so much more problems. He even sees a guy being bullied and beaten in an alleyway but decides not to help him because he realizes, whoa, I'm not Spider-Man anymore. I'm just Peter Parker. He then has this conversation with Aunt May talking about how he is almost responsible for Uncle Ben's death. Subsequently, Otto needs more tritium, so he decides to go to Harry, and he makes him a deal. Kill Spider-Man. I'll give you all the tritium you need. Wait, on second thought. Bring him to me. Alive. This scene is not only terrific because the first shot perfectly embodies Harry's character throughout the movie. He's a drunk, and he's desperately searching for his father's killer, but at the same time, it also gives one of my all-time favorite jump scares because it's really effective. The burning building sequence is a problem that a lot of people have, and I'll talk about that flaw at the end of the movie. I want to save me trying to resolve a lot of the big flaws towards the end of this review. It's a very intense scene because Peter Parker really is just Peter Parker. He's not Spider-Man. And yet he is still contemplating on what he wants. And should he be Spider-Man? Should he try to become the man he once was? Or should he try and stay this new man and have everything be fine? This movie pits split personalities perfectly. Because we have one side of Peter Parker where he wants to be the kind of guy that can not only be with Mary Jane, but the guy who can actually just have a life. He can have a normal, fun, everyday life if he isn't so concerned with being Spider-Man, the other side of that personality. The man who watches over the city, protects everyone, and can't be with Mary Jane because he knows that if he's with Mary Jane, people will eventually find out that she's in love with Spider-Man and she'll be kidnapped and captured. We now discover that Aunt May has decided to move out of her house and she finds a small apartment. And within this scene, he's talking to this kid named Henry Jackson. And he's like, whoa, Henry, you're getting tall. And he's asking Peter, hey, where's Spider-Man? Well, he quit. Why? Well, you know, he wanted to try other things. Now, in this scene, I started to kind of come up with something that I never really thought before. Aunt May decides to tell Peter what she thinks about a hero.
Everybody loves a hero. People line up for him, cheer them, scream their names.
But there's one line of dialogue that she says, specifically,
He needs him.
and with that line of dialogue, you kind of get this little wonder, like, does Aunt May think that Peter could possibly be Spider-Man when she says,
He needs him.
Peter decides, you know what, why don't I become Spider-Man again? As he tries to jump over a roof. Now, I mean, this scene's great, however, Tobey Maguire's facial gestures are kind of iffy. But he tries to jump over it, and of course, that fails. And after a scene of Mary Jane with J. Jonah Jameson's son, she realizes that she may not love this man anymore. And she decides to tell Peter this information. But whoops, Otto Octavius shows up, grabs Peter, and says, I want you to find your friend Spider-Man. Tell him to meet me at the West Side Tower at 3 o'clock. He then throws Peter at a wall, just trying to get rid of him, and then of course takes Mary Jane. Now guys, this next scene, I cannot express just how great and at the same time pretty nostalgic it is. Because Peter ends up running out of the restaurant and realizes he's not seeing right with his glasses. Takes it off and he sees fine, drops them, because now he has decided he is going to become Spider-Man. So of course Spider-Man has to take his suit away from J. Jonah Jameson, and we come to a shot that I don't care what anyone's going to say in the comments. I don't care what anyone's going to say. This is one of the greatest moments in cinematic history when Spider-Man just launches through the sky. It is so perfect because this is the triumphant moment of the movie. This is a man that has literally been beaten into the ground and just pummeled and pummeled and pummeled. And now he decides that he still is that man that he wanted to always be. And of course, a fight ensues between the two of them, which then leads to my all-time favorite train fight sequence ever. Now, yes, guys, I do understand that this scene has been unanimously quoted and unanimously discussed, but I need to put in my 2 cents and say that I personally love this scene as well. It is my all-time favorite train fighting sequence. It is so perfectly directed and shot. I love the way it looks, the way it feels, the side angles, everything feels right with this scene. There isn't a single shot within this entire scene that I thought was wrong. Everything feels right. And I love the shot where Dr. Octopus slowly punches Spider-Man off the train and he lands right on the ground, which would have been a splat if it was anyone else. But then he, of course, just rises back up, which just proves my point. No matter how far he gets pushed down, that man is going to get back up. Which then leads to him trying to stop the train. I can't even express anymore, guys, how incredibly intense and amazing this scene is. The music, the sounds, and of course, the wide visual angle. Sam Raimi is great because he is a true filmmaker, and he knows the art of making a great scene, along with his regular POV shots. Because of this drains all the energy Spider-Man has left, who eventually gets taken by Otto to Harry. So now Harry grabs the blade and he's ready to kill Peter.
If only I could cause you the pain that you've caused me. First we'll see who's behind the mask. I can look into your eyes as you die.
And then of course he discovers that it's Peter. And he drops the blade, of course. But he's like, no, Peter, it can't be. It truly is a great scene, filmed with a lot of dramatic heft and tension because Harry has now become an antagonist of both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. So now we come to the final action sequence as Otto is ready to rebuild his experiment, and Mary Jane is of course the damsel in distress. Spider-Man of course sabotages that experiment and literally kicks his ass. This is a great battle for so many reasons. But what I think is even better than the battle itself is the aftermath of it. When Otto's just sitting there, and Spider-Man finally removes his mask, ready to show Otto who he really is. But now he realizes what he's doing could destroy the entire city. So what does he do? He kills himself, just like every other Spider-Man villain. So now, of course, Mary Jane knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and she finally realizes why he hasn't shown up and why they couldn't be together, even though she really wants to. Now, you guys know that the one thing I hate about a lot of action movies recently is that they use these romantic things in there, and I just find it to be very stupid because it's literally appealing to a specific demographic. However, the relationship between Mary Jane and Peter here feels very real, and that final romantic scene feels very great. It feels very uplifting because she realizes that even though he's Spider-Man, she still wants to be with him, no matter what. And Peter realizes, well, you know what? So be it. And our film concludes with a shot that is so important to the following movie because Mary Jane just stands there, just upset and alone because she realizes that he's Spider-Man and that he can't always be there for her. Okay, now to debunk some flaws. One of the biggest issues I hear is that Mary Jane is just too mean to Peter about not being there for her play. Now, for me, I feel like this is kind of deserved on Peter's part because in Mary Jane's mind, he hasn't been there for any of her plays. We don't know how many plays she's done. This is just one of them. There might have been 20 or 50 or 100 of them. So you can understand why she's angry at Peter. I don't know why people didn't connect the dots on that one, but I feel like that's justified. Another big example is of course the burning building scene, which I promised to address at the end of this video. Now there are two specific reasons, followed by a couple others that I'll mention, why this scene I think is important, and why it's different from the first movie. For one, this scene is very different because Peter Parker is no longer Spider-Man. There is literally a shot where he tries to take off his jacket to see if he has Spider-Man under there, but he realizes he doesn't. He has a white shirt symbolizing his innocence, and he decides to back away because he's just a regular person now. He's not a web swinger. And two, is that even though he saved a little girl, we find out one line from a firefighter.
Some poor soul got trapped on the 4th floor. Never made it out.
And because of those events, that immediately makes Peter think, well, if I was Spider-Man, I would have been able to save those people. Now guys, look, Spider-Man 2 is one of my all-time favorite movies. It has some great nostalgic moments, but it is also a great film that I really think is a drama. I really think you can view this movie as not only just a comic book movie, but an actual psychological drama because it literally shows the true split personality of someone who can't really balance it. And I feel like it's done in such a great way that this movie is excellent. I love Spider-Man 2, and you guys know that I must give Spider-Man 2 an A+. Guys, thank you so much for watching my reviews. As always, you guys are the greatest people ever. I would love to hear all of those comments, so send them in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching all my videos. You guys are the greatest people ever. Thank you, and stay tuned.